On today's show, we watched the All-Star game, and oh boy, do we have some thoughts. We'll talk about how maybe the NBA can go about fixing this on today's edition of Locked On NBA Game Night.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. I cover the Cleveland Cavaliers over at Locked On Cavs, joined today by Jackson Gatlin. Does a great job covering the Houston Rockets over at Locked On Rockets. Thank you for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen today and every day. If you're a fan of the show, do us a favor. Tell everyone about this show. Give us a great rating wherever you subscribe to it via podcast, or hit that thumbs up button for us on YouTube. And today's show, of course, brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And the All-Star game happened Sunday night. It was a exhibition, a tournament, whatever we're going to call this, won by Team Shaq. It was, Jackson, at least in my opinion, one of the worst All-Star performances I've ever seen. And the crazy thing here is it had basically nothing to do with the actual basketball that was bad. I thought that was the bright spot. There just wasn't enough of it.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I didn't get the chance to do it myself, but apparently, seeing what other people commentating on the game, talking about the games and everything, somebody timed the first game. And I only saw this written about the first game, but somebody timed the first game, and it was a total, breaks included, of 22 minutes for the first game between Team Kenny and Team Chuck. And that's including all the stoppages. That's including all the commercial breaks that did happen within that game. So we're talking, we probably only got about anywhere from like 12 to 14 minutes of actual basketball in game one. So if you extrapolate that and apply that probably the same to games 2 and then the final game, of course, as well, in total, I think, and this is a pretty generous approximation here, we probably saw about 45 minutes of basketball with a bunch of other nonsense sandwiched in between all of it, the breaks, and look, some of it was cool, right? The farewell to the inside the NBA crew with Ernie, Kenny, Chuck, and Shaq. Like, that was kind of a cool moment. The gone fishing stuff was funny, but it was just way too much of the other nonsense crammed into what is supposed to be a celebration of basketball, a celebration of the league's best, and also a show really put on for the fans. This didn't feel like a production that was put on for the fans. This felt like a production that was put on for anybody but fans of basketball.
It felt like it was a production that was put on for TNT, if that makes sense. And I want to talk about the basketball first, because this is a show about the basketball. And Jackson, I thought the basketball was solid. I thought that the effort level was higher in this All-Star exhibition tournament, whatever we're going to call it, than the past several. I thought that, Victor Wembanyama played hard. I thought Steph Curry, for the most part, played hard. Not everybody played hard, but I thought we saw a higher level of effort across the board. And maybe part of it was that, the team of older guys didn't want to be upset by the rising stars. And we can talk about them being allowed to play on Sunday night, because I know Draymond Green in particular had a big issue with that on the TNT broadcast. But overall, the basketball wasn't the problem, which I think is the most frustrating part of this, because you and I have both watched the All-Star game every year for a number of years. And it's always been, well, the stars don't try. It's not a good product. The score is outrageous. So they changed formats. And it seems like every time they do change formats here, the first year they do it, it ends up being good. And then it's years 2, 3, 4 down the line where maybe it falls off then. So we'll see if they come back to this next year, what exactly it looks like. But I was expecting, okay, we're not going to see a high level of effort from the players, and that's going to ruin this. And then it was actually anything but. Like, for the first time, I think in All-Star game history, maybe, I saw guys deterred at the rim solely by the presence of a player, because Victor Wembanyama was playing really hard. I think he deserves credit for that. I think a lot of the players deserve credit for that. And I wanted more of that.
It's tough because it's going to take an individual level of buy-in from the players themselves for this All-Star game to ever matter again, right? Victor Wembanyama went out there and played with some pride. He played like he said coming into it, he's like, I'm not there to make friends, right? I'm there to play. And he showcased that, right? He was actually playing defense. He was deterring shots at the rim. He was getting it done offensively. He wanted to win. Guys like on the Rising Stars team, right? It felt like the entire Rising Stars squad was there to try and prove a point, right? We can get to Draymond's commentary on that later, but they were playing hard. Kyrie Irving was locked in and was actually playing both sides of the basketball pretty well. We still had some moments of kind of the traditional like all-star game shenanigans where, players are doing crazy stuff like, bouncing it through, between the legs and, serving it up off the backboard to other guys. We still had some cool moments like that. We got a pretty nice Nikola Jokic to Victor Wembanyama alley-oop special. We got Kyrie Irving diming it up to himself off the glass. Like that was, there were some cool, fun moments, but there was also a level of intensity and kind of pride in these games being played. And that to me was the big takeaway, is how do you capture the essence of that? I think that the NBA has been chasing the All-Star game from a few years back when they did the Elam ending, playing to 24 in honor of Kobe Bryant. And that to date, for me personally, has been the highest level of competition that we've ever seen in an All-Star game, because it was the planet's best basketball players all taking it seriously, like it was a game 7 of the NBA Finals, and it felt like it. You could feel the electricity in the air from that game. And to this point, they've been trying to recapture that essence, and they've been unsuccessful to this point. I'm not ready yet to write off this version of the All-Star game. I think it needs some tweaks. I think you need maybe a higher target score, because these guys can get 40 points almost instantaneously. I mean, we've had All-Star games that, eclipse like 400 combined points or close to it in the past. So, 40 points seems a little low, but then you get into that trap territory of, okay, if you increase the target score from 40 to say 50 or 60 or 70, 80, whatever, pick an arbitrary number, how much of that gameplay then becomes the old shenanigans that we remember in the All-Star game where guys didn't care, right? We see the intensity and the effort level in these games especially start to ratchet up when the teams become, 10 points away from winning, 5 points away from hitting that target score. And then the other team starts to realize, oh crap, like we need to actually play some defense, right? And so I think you kind of get away from that model if you do increase the score. I really don't know how to permanently solve All-Star Weekend, but I can tell you this, Danny, it does not involve more Mr. Beast doing half-court shot shenanigans with Damian Lillard. It does not involve more just cutaways from commercials and 15-minute interruptions between play. Like, that's how you let the air out of a building, and that's exactly what they did during this broadcast.
Right. It was, I mean, if you were, because there was some other prominent programming throughout the night going on Sunday night. So there were a lot of people I know that were bouncing back and forth between this and maybe something else. And when they would change the channel onto TNT to the All-Star game, the chances of them actually seeing basketball played, whether it's a commercial, whether it's an in-game stunt like the Mr. Beast thing, and congratulations to that guy for winning $10,000 or $100,000. Good for him.
The stunt itself is cool, right? Like the kid hitting the shot, going on the same. Like, I loved all of it except for like just don't have Mr. Beast be the MC, right? Have the NBA front the money, bring it back next year. I think they could bring it back next year and have whoever's shooting the half-court shot next to whoever the random fan is, have it be the reigning 3-point champion, right? That'd be kind of a cool little wrinkle. So like, in this year's case, maybe it didn't have to be Dame. Maybe you could have had it be Tyler Herro, right? I understand you make it Dame. Dame's known for the logo threes, all that stuff. But have that be a recurring trend going forward. Just cut down on the BS around it and just focus on the basketball. Have it be a celebration for the fans. That's what we're begging the NBA for.
You know what? That would have been the perfect spot for Kevin Hart. Like, that's Kevin Hart's involvement should have been there, not overtaking the rest of the night. And like, a big part of it for me is Kevin Hart is on the microphone, and this stopped in the later half of it. So I do wonder if someone from the NBA said something, but Kevin Hart is on the microphone in the arena over the broadcast talking about how much he hates watching big guys shoot threes. Like, what are we doing tearing down your own product that it should be the highlight weekend for the NBA. It's the week after the Super Bowl. A lot of eyes are now that we're more focused on football, are going to start turning more so to the NBA. This is sort of, for some people, the introduction to this season of NBA basketball. And that is what you are immediately feeding them. Like, the NBA did nothing, I thought, other than get in their own way on Sunday night. And that, to me, is one of the biggest problems with this.
The NBA is like just repeatedly, like, a Charlie Brown meme or whatever, of like stepping on the rake and just repeatedly hitting themselves in the face, right? They found something that kind of works. They adopted the new All-Star game format. I think the format, while still early, only the first time out with it, I think there is a little promise there. I'm willing to see it, in action, a couple more times to see if the intensity can keep up, or if they can strike a good balance. Maybe you do increase the target score a little bit, but then they just messed it all up by adding all this other BS on top of it. And we could have been happy. We could have walked away excited by this All-Star weekend and talking about a high level of competition in the games, all that. And instead we're sitting here bemoaning all the extras that they tried to add outside of the basketball. And that's just a really unfortunate, circumstance here.
All right, so we've been critical. Next, we're going to give our suggestions of what maybe could actually fix this, make it a better weekend for everybody involved. We'll do that next right here on Locked On NBA Game Night. Today's show brought to you by Hungryroot. When it comes to grocery shopping and meal planning, you might have this ongoing problem where you don't have the time. Work, life, maybe you want to eat healthier. All those things are pretty time consuming and difficult to do. And you might be constantly feeling stressed out. I know finding the time to do things is something that stresses me out all of the time because I don't have the time to do things. So maybe you go to the grocery store, you buy things you don't need because you went there hungry, which is just mistake number one. You can't do that. And then you end up with no time to actually cook the food that you got. So sticking to health goals, that becomes even more of a struggle. So everything can change by discovering Hungryroot. It's a game changer, and it's the easiest way to eat healthy without all of the stress. With Hungryroot, it's like having a personal shopper and a nutritionist all in one. They take care of the grocery shopping, recommending meals and groceries based on your taste and health goals, from anti-inflammatory to high protein and gluten-free options. And the best part, every meal ready in 15 minutes or less. Quick, healthy meals that actually taste great, all delivered straight to your door. It's a huge time saver and can make eating healthy so much simpler. You're going to love Hungryroot. So for a limited time, get 40% off your first box and a free item in every box for life. Just go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA, LOCKEDON-NBA. That's hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA, code LockedOnNBA to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA, code LockedOnNBA. Don't miss out. Thank you again for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. And if you're watching on YouTube, do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button for us as well. So to fix the All-Star game, and you touched upon this a couple of times in the first segment, Jackson, I do think that the target score needs to be higher than 40. And I saw somebody make this point on social media on Sunday night, and I don't remember who it was, and I can't go look them up while I'm talking right now, or I would give them credit, but they made a good point that in the All-Star game, traditionally, we see guys care when it's close at the end. We see guys care at the start of it because that's when a lot of eyes are on it. And then, the middle, I guess, really 36 minutes or so is when those guys don't care. And playing to 40, I think, did eliminate a lot of that middle time. Not to say they cared for the entire portion of it, but I think if you bump it up to 50, you still have guys caring at the start. You still have guys caring at the end. And you're going to have some time where maybe it's not the best, but I just don't think that time is large enough to where you shouldn't push it forward. Maybe past 50, you go on the other side of that, but I think 50 is probably a better number because then you do get more basketball. And I think that is the thing that this night sorely missed.
No, absolutely. More basketball would have been, at least helpful in regards to how we felt about this iteration of All-Star Weekend and the All-Star Game in particular. I'll backtrack even further than that, though, Danny. I have such a serious bone to pick with how the NBA decided to conduct this iteration of the All-Star Game. Can we just backtrack to where they did this whole fake All-Star draft with Kenny and Chuck and Shaq, and have Shaq's OGs and Kenny's young stars with Jalen Brunson on them for some reason, and just the whole, and this was a whole dog and pony show. No, these guys didn't actually draft these rosters. Chuck was not there. Chuck could not tell you where any of these players are from, what countries they're from. He does not know any of that. Okay, they were given a list. They were told, pick these players in this order, and we're gonna name them in honor of you guys. But then we're gonna have it lined up very clearly: the international stars, the quote unquote young stars, and then the OGs. Right? That was just the mess to begin with. And then when you had the different replacement stars out there in place of them, and you're like, okay, well, how does this player fit onto this moniker for this team. I didn't realize that Trae Young was a global star from Lubbock, Texas, of all places. Like that's like it was just kind of a mess. So I just wanted to backtrack to that point, right? The other thing that we hear a lot about the All-Star game is, right, they added the monetary incentive to the All-Star game to try and, increase motivation for players and trying to get guys to, play a little bit harder, take a little bit pride of stuff. I really just hope that this next generation of players is going to be able to kind of reset the culture a little bit, because to Draymond Green's point, right, he took extreme exception to the idea of the rising stars sharing the same court as the actual NBA All-Stars, the guys who earned the privilege to be called All-Stars. And unfortunately, it's Draymond's generation is the reason that we're having to do that, right? Chuck clapped back at him during the broadcast, and I commend Chuck for doing so, because players used to actually enjoy the All-Star game, right? But the All-Star game used to be your chance to shine in front of the world, right? People who maybe didn't have access to basketball, who couldn't tune in and watch basketball games consistently, you somehow found a way to tune into the All-Star game to see all these big names. But now everybody can have access to the NBA on their phone, on an app, 24/7 coverage, highlights posted all over social media. You see these guys everywhere. The All-Star game isn't really a chance for these I don't want to say no-name players, but guys playing in smaller markets or other venues, whatever, to really showcase themselves to the world, because they're doing that already on a nightly basis. Even somebody who plays on, for the Washington Wizards is showcasing his skills on a nightly basis, and people can be aware of how good or bad a player is playing for that team. They don't have to wait for somebody to get an All-Star nod. So I'm trying to think of what incentives could be done for these players, and I can't come up with any. If money doesn't do it, then it's really just going to have to be like a changing of the guard that ultimately does it. And maybe it's enough to just have Wemby be competitive, right? If Wemby is eventually going to be the next, the NBA's GOAT somewhere down the line, maybe it's a few years down the line, maybe it's as early as next season, if he's going to be a DPOY player and if he's going to be in the MVP race and elevates the Spurs, all this stuff, maybe all it takes is that one guy to start treating the game seriously, and then his peers start to follow suit. And all the other young guys are like, okay, well, if Wemby's getting after it in the All-Star game, I'm getting after it in the All-Star game. And it's going to kind of be a domino effect from there. I think that's the only way that this ultimately changes and gets to the place where we as fans can be comfortable and confident and happy with the product on the court.
Right. I think Wemby has to be the guy that can go out and save it. And that's not to say there won't be other young players that make the All-Star game next year, the year after that, just in the near future here. But he is obviously the biggest name. He is the most global superstar of that group. He's going to be the one that has the most influence in that group. And I think that him being able to, one, in his first All-Star game on Sunday night, play defense, play hard, do things the right way, treat this maybe not as a regular season game, but play this with the intensity at least of a preseason game, which I don't think that's asking for too much.
That's
but I do think
bar,
but that's a higher bar than what the All-Star game's been. Like, it is a low bar, but I'm not asking for a lot. I'm just asking for more than what we've had. So I do think that's a way. And the other way that I do think can fix this, especially if they want to stick with this format, like if they want to go with the 4 individual teams and have the tournament style thing, I think that both Draymond and Shaq or Chuck, whichever one said it, made good points. Like, it is because of Draymond's generation that we're in the position that we are in. But I'm also with Draymond, like, playing in the All-Star game, because the Rising Stars guys did play in the All-Star game. I think that is something that should be earned a little bit better than, hey, you're a nice player in your second year, so you get to, and you won a couple of exhibition matches on Friday night, so you're playing Sunday night. Like, I think that's a bit too much of an honor, but it's finally time to expand the All-Star rosters. The league has never been this talented top to bottom, and I do think that adding additional All-Stars the way they should also gives younger guys the opportunity to do this and play hard, and that's kind of where I think the All-Star game can be saved.
I could see that working for sure. And I fully agree with you there. But as kind of piggybacking off that point that you made about expanding the rosters, I think that if they are going to be committed to this new format, then they're going to have to figure out something to where players don't get kind of screwed on their minutes in these games, because you're supposed to kind of share the level a little bit. And in all-star games prior, right, you would have the starters, they'd do their thing for a little bit, then you'd get the reserves in there for a little while, then you'd hit halftime, come back, and it'd follow the general substitution pattern of a regular NBA game, right? The subs or the reserves would get, a little bit of time into the first quarter, beginning of the second, same thing again, into the third, beginning of the fourth, and the starters would be the guys who close things out. Unfortunately, like in this game, in the championship, in the finale between Team Shaq and Team Chuck, like looking, for example, on Team Chuck, Pascal Siakam got kind of screwed. He only played 3 minutes. Alperen Sengun didn't even register on the minutes counter on ESPN's website because he literally played like a possession and a half of that game. And that's really unfortunate for the fans of those teams, of the Houston Rockets, of the Indiana Pacers, who tuned in to support their guy, to want to tune in and see their team represented in the All-Star game, and then to watch their player either not play at all or play very sparingly and not even get any of the high leverage minutes or whatever. Nobody's asking for these guys to be in there in crunch time and, playing down to the wire or have the final possession given their way, but to not even spread the love a little bit further than that, to make sure that those two guys in particular could get a little bit more burn for their respective fan bases, that's got to be pretty frustrating, right? Especially from an international perspective where, for example, with Alperen Sengun, you'll have a bunch of Turkish fans who were tuning into the All-Star game to support the NBA and want to support the best prospect to ever come out of Turkey, and he got shunned essentially in the second game of the All-Star night. So I think that's another added level. If you're going to expand the rosters and have more names in there, which I think is a fantastic point, there's more talent in the NBA than there's ever been. Expand the roster, sure, but find a way to also make sure that these guys all get a fair shake at making a little bit of a name for themselves in the All-Star game.
Okay, let me sell you on my vision then. So you add 4 more All-Stars. You go from the 24-man roster that they have right now of All-Stars up to 28. You've got 4 teams of 7. So if you only have 7 guys per team, I think everybody's going to get their fair share of playing time. You're adding All-Stars. You've got 4 teams of 7. Everyone's going to play. I think everyone's going to be happy in that situation. I don't think that you're too thin, because it's not as if you're playing super long games. I think that's probably the best way to go. And also, I cannot believe that you just took a shot at Cedi Osman and said somebody else coming out of Turkey is a better prospect than that guy was.
Hey, man, we love Cedi Osman in Houston. We call him Cheddar Bob.
Well, we do have to talk about the guy who was a late scratch. Yeah, LeBron. He didn't play in this game. We're going to talk about that, what that meant for the All-Star game next, right here on Locked On NBA Game Night. Today's show brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on that action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. FanDuel's live betting feature keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether you're backing your team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, you never feel like you miss your chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com. That is FanDuel.com to join today. FanDuel.com for your one shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you again for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen today and every day. If you're watching this show on YouTube, do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button for us, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest content from us. Jackson, LeBron James was a late scratch in this one. He did his pregame media availability roughly 2.5, 3 hours before tip-off on Sunday night, and he told the media that because of foot and ankle discomfort, he would not be playing in this game. And I have to say, I was disappointed to hear that news, not necessarily because of the whole roster spot. And I know that instantly people came out and said, well, he took away a roster spot from somebody that's deserving. And that's true. And I hear that argument, but I also don't know how many more opportunities we're going to get to see LeBron on this stage in the All-Star game. And to me, that is something that's always going to be special as someone who grew up watching him in the city I live in, play for the team that I grew up cheering for. Like that, to me, these moments will always be special. And I feel like we missed out on, I don't know how many more there are going to be, but we missed out on one on Sunday night.
I can absolutely understand that sentiment, right? There's a level of, as we've watched LeBron progress and age, on the other side of 40. We used to say the wrong side of 30 for NBA stars now, and now it's for LeBron. He's on the wrong side of 40, but who knows? Maybe we'll be saying he's on the wrong side of 50 10 years from now if he finds the fountain of youth yet again. No, but seriously, right? You got to appreciate greatness when it's around, and it's kind of tough because you're starting to see, right, there's a very clearly kind of a passing of the torch or a changing of the guard as you're seeing the old guard kind of fade out of the NBA, and this is kind of one of those occurrences of, man, like, okay, LeBron missed the All-Star game. Are we going to see LeBron in another All-Star game, right? Will he be in next year's All-Star game? Will he, miss that one as well? Like, so it is disappointing from that perspective. I do have to say, though, we do have to highlight the frustration that I'm sure a lot of fans are feeling. I'm sure Sacramento Kings fans everywhere are ready to riot as if this is basically the third time in their eyes that Domantas Sabonis has been snubbed from the All-Star team, because you had the first one, they took exception to Alperen Sengun, and you had the backup pick, who was the backup pick? Why am I blanking on that? The second selection
in the Western Conference.
Oh, why am I blanking? It was Kyrie in place of AD who couldn't make it. There we go.
Right. That was like, I thought Kyrie deserved it. I thought he had a huge case.
Sure.
I thought he should have made it, period.
But Sabonis fans felt another way about that. So, like, there you go. So Kyrie over AD, another Sabonis snub. And now, like, the third one where, like, that roster spot could have been open for a guy like Domantas Sabonis to get the nod. So I understand the frustration from that angle. It's also just disappointing to see so many different star players unavailable. And obviously injuries are a part of the game, but the late scratches, right, for obviously Anthony Edwards was another one that didn't get to participate, and he was a late scratch. It's just, again, I do wonder, because this game ultimately is just, vanity at the end of the day. It's a popularity. It's not even a popularity contest. Can't say that because it's not even a competition, but it's just a chance for these players to go out there and showcase their skills. But there's a level of disappointment that's there for the fans who did pay good money to be there, to have seats, to go to this game, and to walk away disappointed from the product. And at this point, it's a sad commentary on the NBA that we walk away with expectations being so low every single year that the expectation is to walk away not feeling really enthused or excited about whatever we saw, that you're probably going to be disappointed if you do go to the All-Star game, if you do tune in to watch the product. And we don't want to feel that way, right? We want to see the league's best stars out there and available and playing. And in the case of LeBron, it is frustrating for the point that you highlighted, but it's also, I think, frustrating because LeBron knew that he wasn't going to play. He knew that he wasn't going to play for multiple days leading up to this All-Star selection, and they could have easily found him a replacement. So I think from that perspective, any fans who are disgruntled that one of, quote unquote, their guys on their team, whether it's Sabonis or another potentially deserving All-Star out West, I fully agree and share in those sympathies of anybody who was frustrated with how this thing played out.
Right. And I do wonder what the cutoff for finding a replacement is. Like, if LeBron would have been ruled out 2 days before, do they find him a replacement, or do they just not bother with it? Like, that is one of the other questions, because maybe he did know before Sunday, and he probably did. But at what point is it, okay, well, it's probably too late. These guys are on vacation, or they've got their plans, or, it's just not something that's worth doing. And I don't have the answer to that. I don't know that. But this was, Jackson, the last year that this game is going to be broadcast on TNT. If you watch the game, you probably know that because they made a huge spectacle of it. And I do think that TNT deserves to be honored for what they've done for the game of basketball throughout their tenure covering the NBA and having rights. I thought that having a 15-minute ceremony during a timeout in the championship game was ridiculous. And I also thought that the way that it was just overall handled was something that is ridiculous. But I will say, I think that this is the appropriate low point for the All-Star game. And I think it's a good thing that this is what I'm going to consider rock bottom here, because it's not rock bottom because of the play. It was rock bottom because of all of the other things. And with a new media partner having the game next year, maybe the format stays, maybe it doesn't. But I actually think that I would buy stock in the All-Star game getting better now, because I think there are so many things that need to change and they can't get worse.
Oh, yeah, it cannot get worse than Kevin Hart and Shaq lobbing insults at each other, because you know what it felt like?
Like two ugly girls fight. Nobody cares who wins.
I had to get one Chuck drop in on the show before we wrap this one up. No, you're absolutely right. I think this is a point where you buy low on the All-Star game stock, and I think we could be very pleasantly surprised next year for a variety of factors. The new media partner as well, carrying the rights. Hopefully, better ideas coming in, and maybe they stick with this format. Maybe they try to, change things up again. I love your idea of expanding the rosters and having 4 teams of 7, because then you can do away with the Rising Stars roster of it, and you just have the 4 all-star teams, and they all compete against each other. Nobody really wants to get shown up by their competition, and I think that with another year removed, another year of the changing of the guard, more young guys coming in, more young guys stepping into the limelight, being anointed as all-stars. Hopefully we see more of that mentality that Victor Wembanyama and potentially Steph Castle, right, depending on his career trajectory,
right,
bringing to these competitions to provide a level of edge and enthusiasm and fun for what we all hope is, at the end of the day, just a competitive basketball game.
That's not too much to ask for. And I do think that, I want to be optimistic about this. I think next year is going to be better. I think next year has a chance to be really good. I'm going to hope for that. And, I'll probably end up being disappointed, because that's how life goes with the All-Star game in the NBA. But Jackson, great job. Had a blast getting to do this with you. Thank you for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen today and every day. Like we said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do us a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for us. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest content from us right here at Locked On NBA.